everyone. Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I am Roberta Saphire, still operating in coronavirus by Zoom with my co-partner there.
Hi, I'm Camille Barron. I am a healthcare advisor and financial coordinator here in Sharon, Massachusetts. And we have a return guest. It's been a while, because he's got so many things going on that it's hard to get him. But we finally corralled him, and he is with us today. And we're going to be talking with our guest in the continuing series on the coronavirus today.
Yes, and our guest is Attorney Paul Izzo, and he's got a lot of things besides being an attorney. And I don't know if he'd like me to say how he is into music, but that's one thing I've always been jealous of, that he's been able to have this dual life. Anyway, but
yes,
it's a good hobby.
I have a dark side, a dark and evil side.
Oh, no dark and evil side. Well, welcome, Paul. Let us continue. Why don't we start? What would you like to start with? We could start with, what have you been doing these last 10 years?
Well, the last 10 years, I've been very, very busy. I am, mostly I focus on my kids now. I have 2 children in graduate school, each following their muse. I have a son in law school, which has been really exciting for me because both my wife and I are attorneys, and a daughter getting her MBA. So
great.
Very proud of them.
Great. That is
we're just writing big checks. Like
we're going to have your son on with some of our other law school students. That is exciting when you have a child in law school. Are they teaching the same books that they have?
It's funny. In some ways, it's very similar to the way I went to law school many years ago in terms of the subject matters that you learn about. But obviously, technology plays a much bigger role in law school than it did. When I went to law school, there was very little access to technology. I had one of those select text typewriters. Now everything is done on the internet and word processing. And he had to take the last 8 weeks of school virtually, which is unusual because part of the law school experience is to be in a classroom with your peers, with the professor calling on you. And according to him, they recreated that experience in Zoom. They called people out randomly. They put you on the spot. They challenged you. So he was able to have some of the experience. And fortunately, his internship for this summer was not canceled.
Oh, that's good. Where is it? Is it?
He is with the appellate division of the Norfolk County District Attorney.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. And you got him home. Well, let's get into the one of your topics today was the update on the courts. Nobody so far on this whole coronavirus has talked about the impact that it's had on the courts. And people don't realize there are a lot of courts. There's your criminal court, your appellate court, your civil courts, your probate courts, your district courts. I got them all?
Oh, you're close.
Okay, what do you know?
Well,
What's been going on?
let me start off by saying that the court system has been put under a tremendous strain as a result of the situation that we've been living in. A part of the problem is that people are entitled to their day in court, whether it's a civil or criminal case, and courts have had to balance that constitutional right against safety considerations, safety for judges, clerks, courthouse staff, and parties and attorneys. So the way that the Commonwealth has handled it is the Supreme Judicial Court has issued a series of orders. And rather than go through the whole history, where things stand now is that in the case of criminal trials, if you want a jury trial, if a defendant demands a trial by jury, that's not going to happen before September 1st. There's no chance of any jury trials taking place until September. So there are a number of cases that have either had to be stayed or that are going to be pushed back as a result of that situation. You can't bring jurors in, you can't bring the parties in, you can't bring the witnesses in to an unsafe environment. Now, some criminal defendants have said, I'm happy to have a trial with just a judge, and that's called a bench trial. And there are some bench trials taking place virtually, which is over a computer. The extent to which that is actually happening, I'm not sure about, because I don't do that kind of law. But if both sides agree and the judge agrees, you can have a criminal bench trial in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Same thing applies to civil trials. Most activity is taking place only if there is only a judge and parties involved. There's obviously nothing going on with jury trials or anything like that because of the safety considerations. One practical consideration which attorneys and parties have to think about is just getting stuff filed. Clerks' offices have, for the most part, gone to an all virtual system, meaning that everything is being filed over the internet. Now, most attorneys are used to that. They understand how to do that. But there are some practical considerations that make that difficult. Perhaps you have a really thick file, or you have something that you're not that familiar with if you're an inexperienced attorney. And so that's created some logistical challenges for lawyers. Courts are open for business for emergencies. So, for example, if you wanted to get before a judge for some emergency situation, perhaps you were a victim of domestic violence, you wanted to get a restraining order. There are various things that you can get in front of a judge for. But for the most part, the court system has gone all virtual. And that includes appeals, which is what my son has been doing, working on appeals. Now, appeals take place after a trial. They're to either the Massachusetts Appeals Court or the Supreme Judicial Court, and even the United States Supreme Court, which obviously issued a major decision this week. Even the United States Supreme Court has had oral arguments over the internet. I mean, imagine you're an attorney, you've waited your whole life to go to the Supreme Court and argue a case. It's the culmination of a career litigating, and there you are on the internet, sitting in your kitchen, arguing before the United States Supreme Court. So the appellate courts have gone 99% all virtual as well. So one thing that your viewers might be interested to know is that it's not just the court system that's been affected by the COVID, but actually the law. We have something in the law called the Statute of Limitations. The Statute of Limitations says that you have to either file an action against a criminal defendant or bring your lawsuit within a certain period of time. So in Massachusetts, for example, if you want to bring a negligence claim, you fell on somebody's front steps, or you were in a car accident, you have to bring that claim within 3 years. If you have a breach of contract action, you have to bring it within a different period of time. And there's different statutes of limitations. Well, between the date of, I believe, March 17 and June 30, statutes of limitation were told, meaning that they said that we're not going to have any statute of limitations expire during this period. So they might give you a little extra time to pursue your legal action if you haven't done it already. So I think I've talked enough. Wondering if you folks have any questions. But as of right now, no jury trials. Civil actions and appeals are taking place on the internet, and courts are open for emergency matters only.
So my question on that is no jury trials. And the one that you said, a bench trial where it would just be before a judge.
Correct.
Does that in any way influence the outcome of the trial by just having it before a judge versus having a full jury?
I think it does, but that's the defense. In the case of a criminal case, that's the defendant's choice to make. Now, some defendants and their attorneys, after consulting with one another, will choose a jury trial because they believe that they'll have a better chance to obtain an acquittal in front of a jury. But there are cases where an attorney and his or her client may believe the opposite. I think we just lost Roberta, which would be to have a bench trial in front of just a judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a rule of thumb as to which one you choose. I think it depends on the individual case involved.
Yeah, because I guess some defendants and their attorneys might figure that there may be members of the jury who would be more sympathetic to the defendant,
That's
or
right.
more sympathetic to the I have a mental block.
To the victim, or to the
Yeah.
person who has suffered the
Yeah.
crime,
That's right.
or the
Yeah.
state's position, the Commonwealth
That's right.
position.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, so that's an important consideration. If there is it's not really a statute of limitation, but let's say there's a period of time. I know someone who's been involved in a real estate case where there's been a period of time, a year from which the property was sold on a tax sale, and the original owner had a year in which to be able to redeem it. Okay. And that year was, the courts were not available, and even to just get further action or further information, there was no way to do it. Would that be something that could typically be extended, say if extending that 1 year, 3 months longer, just because?
Well, I wouldn't want to comment on a particular case, but I do believe that the courts are going to give latitude, and the law gives latitude to any statute of limitations that would have expired during that 3-month period. Whether that particular situation would benefit from that tolling of the statute, I wouldn't want to say. But I do know that the courts are saying, we don't want things running out of time during a time when you really couldn't get to court. And I think that's a fair result. One thing that I want to also mention is the COVID virus obviously has put a tremendous strain on just the whole criminal justice system in general. We have had many people file complaints who are incarcerated, claiming that they've been subjected to a higher risk of getting COVID virus. So the Commonwealth has had to, in its discretion, release some people that otherwise would have been either in jail temporarily or in prison. People that are taken into custody, it's added additional burdens to law enforcement in terms of how to handle the safety of those particular people. And then if you let those individuals free without bail, do they pose an added risk of harm to the public? All this stuff is going on. It's just mind-boggling how many things we've all had to deal with over the last 3 months. And we didn't see any of it coming. Nobody said in January, hey, get ready, your world's going to turn upside down in 6 weeks. We've all had to adjust on the fly to all this new reality. I've had a number of new clients come in the door in the last few weeks. I've never met them. I've only dealt with them over the internet, and I'm sure many other attorneys have had the same experience.
Well, a lot of the bigger law offices, I don't know if I say bigger, but where they have like 40, 50 employees, they've been running into probably bigger problems because the people can't come in and cases have to be taken care of, yet they can't be taken care of because the courts had closed down. And now I think what they're trying to do too is get more mediators to see if they can do it. But you always got the wise guys, attorneys who take advantage and who say, well, I did this, and meanwhile they didn't. They always have those.
I would never do that.
Oh, I know you wouldn't, but there's, I think some of the new ones that come out, they don't realize that one of these days it's going to go back in their faces.
Well,
one of the outcomes that lately, you mentioned this, but the liability, say, of the prison system for people who've been infected, because after all, we know that a high percentage of the cases are in prisons. So that's been making the counts go higher in states. But generally speaking, say an employer if employees now are called back to work as the economies reopen, and let's say someone does contract the coronavirus and they believe that it's because they've had to go back to work, what kind of liability situation does that put the employer in?
Good question.
Well, that's a tough one for me to answer because it hasn't really been addressed. I think liability of an employer in general to an employee is limited to the workers' compensation statute. So a workers' compensation claim would have to be, in other words, in most circumstances, and there are exceptions to everything, an employee cannot sue the employer outside of the workers' compensation law. So you can't, if you trip going in the stairway of your employer or leaving lessors and real estate issues out of it, you can't sue the employer for negligence. You can only make a workers' compensation claim.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say regarding employer liability is the employee would have to show that their COVID virus arose out of and in the course of their employment.
Right.
And that might be difficult to prove.
I wanted to say that's interesting because I don't think that anybody's brought it up that way before about the workman's comp, because I understand that they're trying to pass bills through the legislature that an employee cannot sue the employer because they're trying to get them back to work. That was one of your topics, is the employment in general. How do you get people back to work?
You know, there are a number of laws that are being proposed. I mean, the CARES Act, which was enacted by the United States Congress, has some protections for people in terms of job protection and the right to recover certain money from their employer if they have to leave work due to a coronavirus situation. But, you know, one thing I've learned over the years, Roberta, is not to comment too much about laws that haven't really been passed yet. As of right now, I'm not aware of any special additional exposure that an employer would have if an employee returned to work and contracted the coronavirus. And you know, from my perspective, employees are free to decline to return to work.
Right.
Nobody forces anybody to return to work.
So what if an employer hires somebody else who gets somebody else to go back to work and the job is now filled? Do they have to take that other person back when he decides to come back?
It depends on the situation. If an employee is out of work as a result of an illness covered by the Family Medical Leave Act, then the employee is entitled to job protection for a certain amount of time. If the employee does not fall within the Family Medical Leave Act or within the protections of the CARES Act, which is a new law passed by Congress, then maybe the employee would not have job protection. But it would depend on the circumstances.
Boy, what about for like there are probably so many sole practitioners, lawyers. What did they get? How do they get taken care of? That they can't get out, they can't see this, they can't do this. How do they do? They must be losing money.
Well, I know some. I know all the sole practitioners that I know are doing fine.
Oh, good.
Obviously, if you're an attorney that's an employee of a law firm and you're furloughed, or which has happened, especially for medium and smaller firms, then you would be entitled to unemployment, and including the additional federal amount, which is scheduled to run out in a few weeks, you'd be entitled to unemployment benefits.
That's fascinating. Have you had any thing going on with the probate court? They just came out with something that Barnstable, Essex, and Middlesex counties, which is not where we are mostly in Norfolk County, have just done a virtual. They're doing virtual registries. In other words, and they think it's going to stay on even after the coronavirus. But like you say, how do you know? You don't know until it's there. But where they're going to have everything virtually which I assume is either Zoom or by the internet. And then you go into a waiting room, like when we Zoom here, you go into a waiting room, and when a register is ready, he'll take you.
Well, I think one of the things that we're learning in this pandemic is that a lot of things that we have been doing in person, we don't really have to do in person. And I think you're going to see more of this. I think you're going to see courts, when we come out of this, say, I kind of like it that we have discovery hearings over the internet. Look at the gasoline that we save driving to the court. Look at the impact on the environment. Look at the wear and tear on automobiles and attorneys. And it's so much more efficient from a client perspective. I mean, I remember back in the day when I did more court work, a lot of the time that I billed to clients was just driving to the courthouse.
And waiting around. Do you ever hear the story? My lawyer just spent 5 minutes. I go, really? And what about, so he went to the courthouse and he got heard right away? Oh no, he waited around and he did this. Oh, you never saw you in his office? Oh yeah, but that's not this, and it's funny. It's funny because it's the perspective. It's like the courts. You think that they're just supposed to be there and open up, and meanwhile they're closed. I don't even think you could file a motion or anything the past few months.
No, the courts are still open for business. The question is, you can file motions, you can file pleadings, you can file complaints. It's just getting in front of a judge in person would only be an emergency situation. But the courts are open for business. They're open. One thing that I wanted to make sure, because time always goes by quickly with you ladies, is...
That's because we're so much fun.
Yeah, it is fun. On the subject of employment law, I have had some people reach out to me in the last few weeks that have lost their jobs. And one thing that I would encourage your viewers to do is, if you lose your job, get legal advice. Most attorneys will talk to you, if they're responsible, respectful members of the bar, free of charge for a few minutes to at least give you your options. I had a client recently, an older gentleman that was dismissed from a job he'd had for many years. And I was surprised at what he didn't know about his rights and about what options were available to him in terms of unemployment insurance, in terms of potential claims that he might have. And even the most highly educated, highly trained business professional, that's not your field.
No, it's not mine. And somebody just asked me about that, and I wasn't sure where to tell them to call.
Yeah, so that's something that I do, but I don't want to promote myself. But people need to get legal counsel, or at least have a conversation with a lawyer when they are dismissed. And it doesn't always mean you're going to file a lawsuit. It might mean, for example, that you want to get your employment file to have it with you. How do you go about doing that? It might mean that you can get some additional unemployment benefits that you maybe didn't realize you were entitled to, and attorneys can explain that to you. You might have projects that you worked on that you want to take to your new employer, and you have to understand your rights with regard to that. We see that a lot with software engineers, people that are in the creative fields. So I would encourage anybody out there who goes through a job transition situation to make sure they get legal counsel and make sure that they have somebody at least talk to them for a few minutes about what their options are.
Well,
sorry. You think the employer would have to give them while they're letting them go, a sheet of their rights of what they can do?
That is not the case, and I also recommend many employers. Unfortunately, a lot of the law that's come down in the last 20 years encourages employers to say very little when they terminate somebody. Boy. So you have conversations like, "We're dismissing you," and the employee says why, and then they don't say anything. Because if they're afraid. So.
Yeah, Camille, I think we have to wind up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this one last question about the employment of someone's released from employment. The hardest thing to prove is age discrimination. Somebody's 55 and they're let go. They believe that age has a lot to do with it, but there's really no way that you can prove that, Paul, can you?
Well, I would disagree a little bit. I agree that it's not easy because employers have gotten sophisticated about the kinds of things they say, and they've been trained not to put things in your file that would incriminate them. But there are ways of doing it. You can look at patterns of dismissal. You can look at comments that were made. You can look at who was hired to replace the individual that was let go. There's a number of things that you can look at, but every case is different. And that's what makes the law so fascinating. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never had the same situation twice. It's always different.
They keep thinking of new things.
They do.
But anyway, it's time. It's time to go. Thank you so much. I don't know if you realize I got knocked off. I had to get back on.
Oh, we missed you. We were talking about you when you were gone.
I know.
In a nice way.
Yeah. But go ahead, Camille. Your turn.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much. It's great to have you back again.
No, it's my pleasure. And I want to thank you on behalf of Sharon TV. I'm still involved on their board. I want to thank you both for all the work you've been doing. You're reliable. You keep churning out the programs, and the public gets a lot out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And
yeah, thank you very, very much.
Yes. So to our viewers, if you would like more information on legal matters or employment information, please let us know, and we'll be sure to get the information over to Paul, and he can respond to you. As you know, this is part of our continuing series on the coronavirus, and we'd love to hear from you if you have any other ideas for topics or even have questions on some of the topics we've had. We'll certainly have Paul come back because he always has something new and interesting. And in the meantime, please let us hear from you. Because remember, this is your show. The law, your money,
and you.